The fact that Ole Miss could lose the best running back in the Southeastern Conference in their preseason hype would go up kind of just shows what Lane Kiffin has built at Ole Miss. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member for the Ole Miss Rebels and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Thank you very much for joining us and happy Valentine's Day. Today on the show, we talk about the running back room pre-spring and look at where we think the Lane Kiffin offense will go in 2024. And we will look at the running backs on the roster right now and in the future. We will be recording with Tim Thomas a little bit later on today. We're going to talk about the Ole Miss and Kentucky game. Do not worry about it. It's just going to be a little bit later on in the afternoon. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. So, Quinshon Judkins transferred to Ohio State. And before he transferred to Ohio State, we talked about how Ole Miss was going to be ranked around 7th in the country, yada, 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 all this stuff. All of these lofty goals happened before Quinshon Judkins transferred to Ohio State. And on Thursday, on tomorrow's afternoon show with Max Chadwick, you'll talk about what he thought about this transfer. But the fact of the matter is, after the transfer happened, Ole Miss's ranking and preseason hype went up. Why did that happen? Well, mainly because I'm not the type of person to say that running back is the most overrated position in football at the moment, but it kind of is. And you saw me all during the offseason talking about not overpaying for a running back and all of that stuff. But the main reason is because Lane Kiffin is the person pulling the strings, and this offense has always found a way to be successful with Lane Kiffin doing whatever he wanted to do. Simple as that. If you look at last year's statistics, Quinshon had 271 carries. He netted 1,158 yards for 15 touchdowns, a 4.3 average. Ulysses Bentley had 95 carries, 552 yards for a net of 540, a 5.7 average and 4 touchdowns. And Matt Jones had 12 carries for 80 yards. He did have a net of 79, average 6 yards a carry with 2 touchdowns as well. That is what the distribution of carries looked like. And that is what it looked like whenever you had a guy that was, quote, unquote, the alpha dog in the room that was Quinshon Judkins. Another 1,000-yard season. He would have been in position if he came back to break every Ole Miss rushing record there was. And honestly, I'm kind of glad that Deuce McAllister gets to keep it now, but that's beside the point. Now, when I talk about all the time that the offense is going to change, you saw what it looked like in 2023. And it was a very heavy workload for Quinshon Judkins. Ulysses Bentley got less than 100 carries, and there was no 30 running back to speak of. And I was like, the offense is going to change. The fact that Jackson Dart and the wide receiver position are such important cogs in the offense moving forward, the offense is going to change. Well, I looked down at my YouTube comments, and somebody was talking about Ole Miss throwing the ball 65% of the time, and I never said that. In fact, if Ole Miss throws the ball 50% of the time, I would be surprised. But Ole Miss the last 2 years has ran the ball 62 to 70% of the time, including through Quinshon Judkins' heavy workload, even more so when they had Zach Evans as a backup back. Last season, it got a little bit less, but that was also with the improvement of Jackson Dart. Well, I think it's going to be pretty clear what happens is the offense is going to look like it did in 2021. that had roughly the same yardage and same touchdowns as the 2023 offense. Is just not as top heavy. Matt Corral had the most carries for the season, but you had a leading carrier of 133 carries, backed up by 130 carries. And then Henry Parrish had 105 carries. 3 running backs that would have been the second leading ball carrier on last year's team behind Quinshon Judkins. Every one of these had more carries than Ulysses Bentley, but nobody had the extreme top level carries that Quinshon Judkins is able to get. Jerrion Ealy is remarkably like Ulysses Bentley IV. I think Ulysses Bentley is probably a plus version of Jerrion Ealy. Snoop Conner, that's something we're going to have to see. We have to find out if Kedrick Reescano is a Snoop Conner or a Henry Parrish. But Henry Parrish having over 100 carries, running for 5.3 a carry, he was a big workload in that 2021 season as well. The offense is going to change in 2024. I'm not saying that it's going to become the air raid. So nobody hear that. But the offense is going to change. It's definitely going to change. And I think the way it's going to change is it's going to look like 2021. If you look at the fact at how carries were distributed, yardage-wise, touchdowns, and the way the running game was made to work in 2021, with a quarterback that was very good and a focal point of the team. And you can kind of see the thought process that's going to happen. Now, the difference is in 2021 was a Jeff Lebby offense. In 2024, it's going to be a Charlie Weiss offense. So we might need to go back and look at what FAU did in 2019 to see exactly how this works. Brian Robeson was the quarterback at FAU. They had a running game and all of that stuff, but they ran the ball 52 to 56% of the time in that scenario. Robeson had Harrison Bryant. There were weapons. FAU won their conference that season. I think it's possible we see an offense similar to that. And when you have a player like Ulysses Bentley IV, who, you know, over his first 2 years at Ole Miss has had an injury history both years. He's missed multiple games. His, I guess, junior season, I'm not 100% sure of what the classification is, but the 2022 season, he missed multiple games. Last year against Mississippi State, he got hurt. Against Penn State, he got hurt, and that caused him to miss a little time as well. When he was healthy, he was arguably the most proficient running back in Ole Miss's backfield. The Arkansas game was won largely because of him running the ball in the fourth quarter. And I think that him taking a step forward and staying healthy and proving that he can would make him a ton of money in the NFL in the future, because he is, I hate to use this phrase, but he's John Avery fast. He is one of those players and one of those few players that whenever he gets in the open field, he's gone at the college level. If you can remember how it felt when Plumlee took off, you can remember how it felt when Dexter McCluster took off, when John Avery took off. That same type stuff happens when Ulysses Bentley IV takes off. He needs to stay healthy for a full year, because if he gets injured, the way it sits right now, and I do think Ole Miss is going to find a transfer portal back for the season. So they're going to have that, and they have Matt Jones and all of that. So everybody understand what I'm saying. But if Ulysses Bentley IV gets hurt this season, that leaves a Kedrick Reescano player that does not have a college carry at this point as somebody that you're going to be counting on. And you're going to be counting on that player to absolutely develop moving forward. And we're going to talk about that. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. We're just getting started. The most important storyline of spring practice, is Kedrick Reescano, his development. And we will break all of that down next. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. See the view exactly from your seat before you buy, so you know what to expect when you get there. All-in prices, they show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out, and you can buy tickets with 2 taps. Click, you are there. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. Seriously, it's the place to find last-minute seats. And when they say last minute, apparently they mean it. So you can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And with zone deals, you get to pick the section, and GameTime will pick the seats for big time savings. And if the GameTime guarantee means you will always get the best price, if you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Terms apply. Just download the GameTime app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right. So, Kedrick Reescano, and this is probably the most important storyline going into spring practice this season. And this running back has all the upside. If you think of the running backs that have been recruited to Ole Miss by Lane Kiffin, and I'm going to leave the player out of Columbia that got moved over from Matt Luke's class, leave him off for just a second. Kentrell, I forget his last name. I do apologize for it, Kentrell. But Henry Parrish, ball player, ended up starting running back at Miami. He's from South Florida. He just went home. He followed Kevin Smith back to Miami. When Kevin Smith came back to Ole Miss, Henry Parrish stayed at Miami. Kedrick Reescano, who is an unbelievable player. Quinshon Judkins, that speaks for itself as well. And the players that Ole Miss are recruiting right now is just a who's list of importance with a Kylan Deere and Alvin Henderson and those guys. They have an eye for running backs. And one thing that you look is Kedrick Reescano, he's toolsy. All the contact balance, all the footwork, everything that would make a running back valuable, he does it very well. And that needs to translate to the college football environment. And they love him. He's gone through a year worth of practices. They've put eyes on him. So they know what they're going to get more so than us. Okay. I do know that they love him. We haven't seen it yet. The first time we're going to get to lay eyes on it is the first time that Charlie Wise Jr. calls an inside zone in the Grove Bowl. Now, people that go to open scrimmages during the spring, yeah, that's a chance for them to see it as well. But the first time that the masses will get to lay eyes on Kedrick Reescano will be the Grove Bowl. And I think he's going to pass the test with flying colors. We put up stats in the first segment, and it showed how one-sided the carries were. It was a situation, if you believe the rumors, of somebody constantly going back, trying to get more and more and more, and constantly trying to bend over backwards to make that player happy. And because of that, you saw in 2021 how the carries looked, and then you see in 2023 how the carries look. It isn't because the running back room was worse than it was in 2021. It's because you're trying to keep a singular player happy. So we were not able to see Kedrick Reescano in 2023 because carries were demanded by the quote star of the team. Honestly, I think that game gets played more often than we know. Everybody wanted to see Walker Howard or Austin Simmons in the Peach Bowl. They should have. I mean, Ole Miss was beating the heck out of Penn State, but Jackson Dart stayed in. Why? Jackson Dart had not declared that he was coming back. It's not a situation where you risk ticking off a player that you need and want to come back. Jackson Dart was going to finish that game in order to keep him happy because he wanted to finish that game. And I think that happened in order to keep him happy, happened a lot with carries for the running back position as well. The backup running back had less than 100 carries over the course of a season. That is a workload by Quinshon Judkins that is unmatched in modern college football. He had nearly 280 carries. So I think that now, once you get back into this situation, you're going to have a situation where Ulysses Bentley gets 130 carries, where Kedrick Reescano gets 130 carries, and whoever they bring in the portal gets 100 carries, just like you saw in 2021. I think the pass-run ratio will be about 57% run, as opposed to 65 where it was. And the year before that, it was nearly 75, by the way. I think this offense is going to look a little bit more as far as quarterback-centric like it did in 2021 as well. But it all depends on Reescano developing. This is an absolutely massive offseason for this young man. He's got all the talent in the world, and count me as a fan. I can sit here and look at his high school video over and over and over again, and that's because he's really good. He had offers from Power 5 schools all over the place. Ole Miss swooped in at the end and was able to land him. And you get that contact balance. You get that vision. You get that footwork of being able to go side to side and the natural instincts of being on a football field. He has all of that. Now he just has to get the timing down and get it done to where you can do it against bigger, faster players. And the players are going to continue to get bigger and faster. Now, the defense that he's going to be going against the Ole Miss Rebels is completely out of this world. With Walter Nolan and Princely Imam Chris Paul, all of those defensive backs. This is a talented unit that Ole Miss is going to field. That's going to help. There is no Alabama in 2024. So the game against the Georgia Bulldogs, that's the game of the year. That's the one where a player like Kedrick Reescano gets to announce himself onto the scene. I'm telling you, I'm a big fan of Reescano. There's really no other way to put that. But this spring is probably the story of spring. When over the last couple of years, it's been a quarterback competition or something like that, when we're trying to figure out storylines for spring, it is the development of Kedrick Reescano. The better he gets, the better he does, the more he picks up, the more trust that Kevin Smith, Charlie Weiss Jr., and Lane Kiffin have in him, the better Ole Miss football will be in 2024. I am not crowning Ulysses Bentley IV as being the starter. I think there is a path for a Kedrick Reescano to emerge onto the scene and become that guy. He's got pass protection. He's got a ton of stuff to do. That is why this spring is so important. But this is also why it's important. A, you want to take contact and hits off of Ulysses Bentley IV. Period. You've seen what Ulysses Bentley can do. So it's going to be Kedrick Reescano's spring. Him and Matt Jones and Fred McAfee, they're going to tote the rock during the course of the spring. But then you're going to bring in a transfer back. And that guy, you need to have enough separation between where you are and where he is to where you can withstand what's going on. So you're getting the 130 carries and not the 95. It's literally worth about 35 carries. Now, like I said, there's people that's been getting in my comments telling me that I'm sleeping on Matt Jones, and maybe that could be absolutely the case. But I'm not going to count on a walk-on, and I'll be pleasantly surprised if Matt Jones becomes the third running back to where he plays a great bit and he is effective as that tandem of running backs. Until then, I'm going to assume that they're going to go get a transfer back. And that back is going to get about 100 carries. They're going to keep some tread on the tires, and they're going to figure out a way to make it work between Ulysses Bentley, between Kedrick Reescano, and between whoever that transfer back is. You have a situation to where you have a chance to be really explosive offensively, and they have to figure out the rotations of the team, especially the running back room, to make sure you have the right guy on the field at the right time. There's an art to it. There is. I can't count the number of times in my lifetime to where the perfect call has popped in my head, and then you reached out, you look out there, and all of a sudden, no, they don't have the right personnel to do this. So we'll see exactly how that goes as well. I'm pretty fired up. I think Kedrick Reescano has a chance to be a special running back. Still more to come on Locked On Ole Miss, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ole Miss went into the transfer portal and got Logan Diggs. What does that mean? And what needs to be done post-spring for Ole Miss football? Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all the favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, same game parlays, there's prop bets, all of that stuff, and much, much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. Be part of history. Now, Ole Miss did, after Quinshon Judkins left, did go get a commitment from Logan Diggs. And Logan Diggs is a really good running back, by the way. This is what Logan Diggs was able to do over his career. He did start it at Notre Dame with Brian Kelly. Ended up his second year at Notre Dame running for 820 yards, averaging 5 yards a carry, having 4 touchdowns. He had 165 carries that year. The next year, he gets to LSU, where he becomes the second or third option, depending on how you want to look at it. At LSU, he ran for 119 for 653 yards, averaged 5.5 yards a carry, and had 7 touchdowns. Logan Diggs, average-wise, has been an effective running back and has never had a yards per carry average less than what Quinshon Judkins had just a year ago. Here is the problem with Logan Diggs. In his last LSU game, the ReliaQuest Bowl against Wisconsin, he injured his knee. And the rumor is, nobody's going to tell anybody about it, it's an ACL. And I think that's the case, because if you look, all of the players were moving around on the portal thing, and then they had Logan Diggs leaning up against the Chucky stand because, he couldn't move around. He just had the Letterman's jacket on. And he's a good little running back. But if you look at what goes on, now, people are going to tell you, oh, yeah, people are coming back from the ACL. It's perfectly stable in 5 months. You're perfectly good to go in 6 months. That's not how this injury works. Honestly, that's just not how this injury works. It is still a 12 to 18-month injury, regardless. The mental stuff that goes in on that injury still is a thing. You might be structurally perfectly fine, but it takes some time to get back to where you need to be. The earliest I can remember And the only running back that I can remember being really effective coming back within a year was Nick Chubb at Georgia. But we'll see how that goes for him. Now, Logan Diggs, he got injured on January 1st. So if you look forward and you push it forward, about a year would be January, obviously. But structurally, he should be good to go by the start of football season. He should be. And he'll be working on all of the mental stuff that he has to do. Now, Ole Miss, if they're smart, and if Logan Diggs is smart, they will make sure that that red shirt that he needs to have is still available. Practice all you can and use him towards the end of the season or in the playoffs, so that red shirt season remains intact. You can play 4 games in a regular season and keep your red shirt. So we'll see exactly how that goes with Logan Diggs. Really good running back. I'm excited to have him. I'm not expecting him until towards the end of the season. I think the clock starts ticking on Logan Diggs about the Georgia game. And then after that, you start looking at, is this the week? Is this the week? And because Ole Miss needs to get into the playoff, not just use him in the playoff. You still have to get there. Now, we talked about that, so we'll talk about this. Ole Miss is going to have to find a running back probably that is willing to get about 95 carries over the course of the season. It's going to be difficult to do. We had TJ Harden on Monday's show talking about that. With the Deshaun Foster hire at UCLA, Harden is probably going to stick around. That was his position coach at UCLA. That relationship is still there. So we'll see exactly how that looks. Now, is it a player that is not currently in the portal? I've seen several players that are pretty good football players that aren't quite in the portal yet that are, let's say, potentially open season. I'm curious to see exactly how that goes. Now, whoever is coming in is probably coming in to be the 3, because Kedrick Reescano is going to have the better part of about 4 weeks, 5 weeks to separate himself from whoever comes in. He needs to display how much he knows the offense. He needs to display his ability to run the ball with authority and pick up tough yards against going to be a very tough defense. So we'll see exactly how they go. That is how the running back room is going to look in pre-spring. And Tim Thomas is going to come up later on today. He's going to talk about the Ole Miss Kentucky game last night. So don't worry, you're not going to miss anything about that. I just wanted to save all the discussion for Tim Thomas and all of that as well. So stay tuned for that. It'll come up at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight, and he'll be talking about Chris Beard trying to get redemption up against the Kentucky Wildcats. So thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every dayers, like we said, we had Tim Thomas later today talking about the Kentucky game last night. Baseball is nearing opening day in Hawaii. Poor guys. And we wait on the most anticipated football season at Ole Miss. You can check out tomorrow Max Chadwick from PFF. He is going to be on the show. You can check out that interview and what he thinks about the Ole Miss Rebels as well. You can hear about it all right here. But for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 stream channel. For those of you on YouTube, we'll send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everybody.